Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Concordia University's fourth space. Thank you for joining us for today's event, Zone GRE, the journey from researcher to innovation leader. And this is part of a series, and this is episode 1, the hidden heroes guiding researchers beyond their comfort zone. Now, to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from fourth space, and we are located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. And at Fourth Space, we work with our university community to mobilize knowledge, co-creating daily activities that examine research questions and projects in development here at the university. We're running today's event as a live streamed meeting. So any comments or questions via Zoom, please put them into the chat and we will try to get them to our guests. For those of you in the space, if you like to participate, just let us know and we'll get a microphone to you. Okay, and with that, it is now my pleasure to hand it over to our host, Terry Harris, V1 of Studio Marketing and Partnerships Manager. Terry, to you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Zone GRE. Turn the mic back on. We'll take that again. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Zone GRE, a video podcast documenting the journey from researcher to innovation leader. Étudiant la juxtaposition des écosystèmes académiques et entrepreneuriaux, le parcours de chercheur à leader de l'innovation. But what is a researcher? And what is an innovation leader? At V1 Studio, we define a researcher as someone who is either a master's or a PhD student, a postdoc, or who holds a doctorate degree. It's someone who dedicates their time to deepening a knowledge base in a specific field, whether it's in the STEMs, the life sciences, photonics, med tech, clean tech, ocean tech, and more, or in the social sciences, such as law, psychology, or mental health. The problem is, too few researchers remain in academia. They abandon their research in pursuit of employment to enter the job market. They only rarely get to work directly on projects related to their university research. So this knowledge is lost, collecting dust on a shelf somewhere in a basement at UQAM or on a 6th floor at Concordia, in a cellar at UDS, or in a cave at McGill. All this knowledge lost forever. And the saddest part is that this knowledge is often directly related to pressing social problems. Whether it's in health, the environment, family, or technology, it not only has the potential market impact, but also the potential to bring about a change in society. But there's a fledgling cultural movement happening right now in the research community. Researchers are seeking to have an impact beyond academia. They want to explore the reverberations of their research outside of the golden cage of academic institutions and put them to work solving real problems for society and in the marketplace. At the same time, another movement is taking place in Quebec's innovation ecosystem as the province strives to position itself on the global chessboard, competing for capital, talent with other Canadian and international startup hubs. So Zone GRE aims to provide a convivial infrastructure for these movements to flourish. Aligned with V1 Studio's human-centric values of researcher empowerment and personal growth, the program will focus on the people behind these movements, discovering their motivations, uncovering their pain points, and providing them a safe space to explore solutions to the challenges that they're facing. In today's episode, Hidden Heroes, Guiding Researchers Beyond Their Comfort Zone, we will feature 3 of V1 Studio's program leads. We'll go behind the scenes into what goes into developing a program to support scientific entrepreneurship and innovation. Each guest will discuss their motivations behind supporting the movement, the potential for researchers impacting the innovation ecosystem, and the challenges and opportunity they themselves are experiencing as they help researchers navigate their journeys from academia to the entrepreneurial world. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Alrighty then, let's go. So as a researcher, you'll likely hear these names as your colleagues take some of the free programs they're running. Let's begin by welcoming Alice Vervac, our esteemed Quebec Scientific Entrepreneurship Program lead.
Bon matin tout le monde.
Bon matin, Alice. Merci d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Donc, comment est-ce que vous sentez-vous?
Incroyable. C'est mon premier podcast. Quelle belle expérience. Merci de m'avoir invité pour le premier épisode.
Oui, effectivement. Ben, c'est ça. On commence frais et puis on pensait qu'ensemble, on pourrait avoir une petite discussion que nous allons commencer. Alors, parlez-nous un peu de vous et sur quoi vous travaillez.
Avec plaisir. Moi, c'est Alice. Je viens de la Belgique. Je suis arrivée au Québec il y a environ 1 an et demi. À Bruxelles, je travaillais pour des think tanks, des centres de recherche politique. Je travaillais à moitié en tant que chercheuse et à moitié en tant que gestionnaire de projets de recherche. Donc, j'étais moi-même impliquée dans l'analyse des affaires étrangères de l'Union européenne et en même temps aussi gestionnaire de ces recherches. Donc, mon objectif à Bruxelles, c'était de combler le fossé entre les décideurs politiques et les chercheurs. Et maintenant que je suis à un studio, à nouveau, je me retrouve à combler un fossé, mais cette fois-ci, c'est le fossé entre les chercheurs et l'entrepreneuriat. J'aime bien être l'intermédiaire en quelque sorte.
Alors, un pont en quelque sorte.
Un pont.
Ouais, ouais. Et étant de la Belgique, naturellement, on a ce réflexe, la capitale européenne. Donc,
exactement.
Ben écoute, bravo, merci d'être ici. C'est vraiment, je suis comblé de pouvoir avoir cette conversation avec toi. Et puis donc, quel est le problème que le programme QCES essaie de résoudre?
Le problème, je crois qu'on a toute une liste qu'on aimerait bien accomplir avec le programme QCES. Je vais me focaliser sur 3, si je peux. Donc, la première, c'est l'état d'esprit. Deuxièmement, la formation. Et troisièmement, l'accessibilité. Donc, avec l'état d'esprit, on va vraiment chercher à défier, à révolutionner l'état d'esprit du chercheur. Ce n'est pas parce qu'on est chercheur qu'on ne peut pas être entrepreneur. C'est une phrase assez simple, mais pour vraiment l'intégrer, le chercheur a besoin d'un temps de réflexion et d'introspection. On va chercher donc à démystifier l'entrepreneuriat, le rendre plus accessible aux chercheurs. Deuxièmement, la formation est conçue spécialement pour les chercheurs. Le monde entrepreneurial ne favorise pas toujours l'intégration des recherches des chercheurs au sein du monde entrepreneurial. Donc, cette formation est conçue pour les chercheurs. On comprend leur langue. Moi-même, j'ai été chercheuse, je les comprends très bien. Donc, on va adapter le langage pour les chercheurs. Et troisièmement, l'accessibilité. Donc, il y a aussi déjà l'accessibilité via le concept d'entrepreneuriat, mais aussi tout simplement le fait que le programme QCES est un programme gratuit, virtuel, et donc accessible à tous les chercheurs à travers le Québec. Rien que ça, je trouve ça incroyable. Le chercheur, du moment qu'il a le moindre intérêt pour l'entrepreneuriat, peut s'inscrire pour ce programme et on va l'accepter.
Ouais.
Il n'y a pas de critères d'éligibilité du moment qui font partie d'université et qui sont au-delà de la 2e maîtrise.
Ben, écoutez, c'est magnifique. Merci pour cette description. On sent la passion que tu as pour ce programme-là. Et puis, en plus, avec les défis de taille auxquels font face les chercheurs et les chercheuses pour rentrer dans ce monde entrepreneurial, ils vont sortir de leur zone de confort. C'est le titre d'ailleurs de cet épisode. Donc, qu'est-ce que vous voulez dire par un espace sécurisé ou sécurisant et pourquoi est-ce important pour la croissance?
Tout à fait. Je crois que déjà, c'est la mission globale de V1 Studio, d'offrir un safe space, mais c'est en tout cas le cas dans le programme QCES, évidemment. On offre un safe space afin que les chercheurs puissent sortir de leur zone de confort. Les chercheurs vont apprendre des nouvelles compétences d'entrepreneuriat. Et ça peut paraître parfois très écrasant, très accablant parce qu'ils sortent de leur zone de confort, ils sont dans leur domaine de la recherche. Le mot entrepreneuriat a des connotations dans la recherche et c'est vraiment une identité différente, lointaine. C'est comme ça que c'est perçu en tout cas. Donc, on va briser ces connotations, ces idées préconçues qu'on a. Et pour avoir ce moment de réflexion et de changement d'identité, on a besoin d'un safe space. On a besoin d'être vulnérable. Dans le programme, oui, il y a le côté théorique, le côté pratique. On va acquérir des connaissances d'entrepreneuriat, mais c'est OK aussi d'admettre qu'on a peur de l'entrepreneuriat. Il faut être vulnérable. Il y a aussi le syndrome de l'imposteur pour le chercheur qui va chercher des nouvelles connaissances en entrepreneuriat. C'est il va pas se sentir très à l'aise. On le voit dans nos participants et c'est normal. C'est pour ça qu'on a un safe space pour pouvoir être vulnérable. Moi-même, j'ai eu le syndrome de l'imposteur quand j'ai commencé ce programme. Je ne suis pas entrepreneur, mais je gère un programme d'entrepreneuriat. Donc, au début, ça a été difficile pour moi.
Ouais.
Ça a été difficile, mais heureusement, je suis bien entourée dans mon équipe avait un studio. Mais ça a été difficile parce que je me focalisais sur les atouts, les compétences que je n'avais pas. Je me dis, mais je ne suis pas entrepreneur, comment je fais? Et au fil du temps, et aussi grâce à mon équipe avait un studio, je me suis focalisée sur ce que j'avais, mes atouts à moi. J'ai été chercheuse, je comprends ce domaine-là. Et de deux, j'aime la prise en parole en public. Je sais comment convier et expliquer des idées très complexes à un public plus large. Et c'est ça qu'on apprend à nos chercheurs, c'est que quand eux vont dans le domaine entrepreneurial, ils sont uniques et spéciaux. Ils amènent leur trousse d'outils spéciale, ils ont leur perspective, ils amènent quelque chose d'unique.
Et c'est merveilleux cette description-là. Et puis aussi, donc, sortir de sa zone de confort. Pourquoi est-il important d'être vulnérable pour fleurir, pour grandir, à ton avis?
En général ou en entrepreneur?
En général, parce que on parle toujours de deux mondes, le monde académique et le monde entrepreneurial. Moi, à mon avis, ces mondes-là devraient se juxtaposer. Il ne devrait pas avoir deux mondes nécessairement parce que tout le monde, comme tu l'as dit, fait le pont entre un et l'autre dans sa vie personnelle, dans sa vie professionnelle, dans sa vie de chercheur. Donc, mais le réflexe de sortir de sa zone de confort, on dirait qu'on voudrait être sécure et dans ce safe space-là, mais pas prendre le pas. Et puis, d'après ce que je comprends avec le QCES, on les pousse de manière très, avec des gants de velours pour sortir de cette zone de confort.
Tout à fait. Je crois qu'on peut se décrire comme une gang de cheerleaders au programme QCES parce qu'on va toujours les encourager à croire en eux-mêmes. Les participants, donc déjà, le programme QCES, c'est la première étape que les chercheurs au Québec peuvent entreprendre pour explorer un parcours entrepreneurial. Les participants qui vont participer au programme QCES ont des objectifs très variés. Il y en a, clairement, ils veulent commencer leur propre start-up. Et il y en a d'autres qui veulent lancer un podcast ou une organisation à but non lucratif. Ou il y en a qui veulent tout simplement, entre guillemets, acquérir des compétences d'entrepreneuriat. Et je dis entre guillemets, c'est simple, c'est pas si simple que ça. Et c'est incroyable parce qu'acquérir des compétences d'entrepreneuriat peut dire qu'ils peuvent être intrapreneuriat, c'est-à-dire l'idée d'être entrepreneur au sein d'une organisation. Oser créer des initiatives, prendre des risques, mener des projets novateurs au sein de l'organisation pour la faire progresser.
Ouais. Et c'est vrai que les chercheurs qui sont toujours en train de pousser les limites du savoir, sont peut-être habitués à prendre ce risque-là. Et puis, ça leur donne l'occasion dans le QCES. Parlez-moi un petit peu de l'esprit de cohorte qui se forme à travers des centaines de personnes qui font partie de ce programme.
Depuis que le programme existe en 2019, donc, on a déjà accueilli plus de 1200 participants. Donc, chaque année, on a énormément de participants de toutes les, pas toutes les universités, mais en tout cas 15 universités au Québec. Donc, ça inclut Montréal, mais on a aussi Abitibi, Rimouski, Chicoutimi, Sherbrooke, etc. Puis, niveau expertise, branche scientifique, on a tout. Tu le nommes, on l'a. On a des participants en, évidemment, ingénierie, biotech, en santé publique, océanographie, il y en a qui étudient les batteries, il y en a qui étudient les insectes, l'art, etc. On a de tout. Dans la cohorte actuelle, on est déjà à la 13e cohorte, donc là, on est en automne avec eux. On a 50% de femmes chercheuses dans la cohorte. Donc, on va déjà... On va démystifier que les femmes ne sont pas intéressées par l'entrepreneuriat parce que ce n'est pas vrai.
Et puis, vous êtes en train de justement accompagner ce mouvement qui est en train de fleurir, comme je parlais avant, ce fledgling movement-là qui est en train de se passer. C'est vraiment spécial. Donc, mais pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas le programme, Peut-être qu'on peut faire une petite description. En quoi consiste-t-il?
Comme je l'ai dit, c'est la première étape que les chercheurs peuvent faire pour explorer l'entrepreneuriat ou l'intrapreneuriat. C'est un programme de 12 semaines, c'est 1 heure de cours par semaine, plus un peu de travail autonome, selon la motivation du participant. C'est un programme, il y a le côté théorique. Évidemment, on va avoir un aperçu des concepts de base d'entrepreneuriat tels que le client, le marché, la valeur de proposition, les aspects légaux, la propriété intellectuelle. Il y a le côté pratique. C'est un programme, mais c'est aussi une communauté. On a énormément de participants d'universités différentes, d'expertises différentes. Donc, on va avoir un lien interdisciplinaire, interuniversitaire. On a des sessions de réseautage, on a des travaux en groupe et on a un channel de communication où les participants peuvent communiquer. Et ça, c'est vraiment une richesse indescriptible.
Ouais.
On a des participants, historiquement, on avait toujours plus de participants en ingénierie. Là, de plus en plus, on a des participants en sciences sociales et c'est vraiment formidable parce que grâce à cette demande, on a pu incorporer plus l'aspect social de l'entrepreneuriat, quel est l'impact social qu'on a avec nos projets entrepreneuriaux et surtout au sein du programme QCES, vu qu'il y a des échanges, il y a aussi des échanges de rétroaction, de feedback sur les idées que les participants ont. Donc, un participant en ingénierie va pitcher sa présentation de son idée de projet et un participant en sciences sociales va lui donner son rétroaction. Et ça, c'est absolument riche.
Ouais, c'est vraiment un moment spécial et on voit ça. On invite les acteurs de l'écosystème qui viennent participer et puis pour apprécier ce que font ces chercheurs-là lorsqu'ils font une présentation. Et c'est un pitch, je pense, de 90 secondes.
Oui.
Donc, à quoi est-ce que cela ressemble lorsqu'un chercheur, pour la première fois, fait un pitch à l'extérieur d'un contexte académique?
Au début, c'est difficile. C'est difficile. Donc, au long du programme QCES, évidemment, on va le préparer, on va l'encourager, on le rappelle que c'est un safe space et que le plus important, c'est d'oser communiquer ses idées à un public plus large et pas non seulement un public scientifique et académique. On voit la progression très vite parce qu'on commence de base et on voit que c'est toujours un peu difficile de comprendre le problème qu'ils essayent de résoudre. Et c'est ça le point focal du programme QCES. On va sortir du milieu académique. Souvent, les chercheurs ont déjà une grande idée de la solution. C'est sur quoi ils travaillent depuis des années, sur la technologie, leurs produits, leurs recherches. Mais ils n'ont peut-être pas assez réfléchi à l'impact de leur recherche au-delà du milieu académique. C'est-à-dire, qui va utiliser ça?
Ouais.
Qui est impliqué? Qui est influencé, touché? Qui veut aussi acquérir son produit ou sa technologie ou son service. Et à la fin, en effet, ils peuvent pitcher leur idée de projet à des experts d'incubateurs et d'accélérateurs à travers le Québec.
Wow.
Et c'est le moment de gloire.
Ouais.
Moi, je suis très fière à ce moment-là, évidemment. C'est une belle séance. On sent le stress des participants, mais ils y arrivent à coup sûr. Cette année, en printemps, avec la 2e cohorte, plus de 100 participants ont pitché devant des experts d'incubateurs. Et c'est une opportunité de réseauter et de continuer leur parcours après le QCES.
Alors, cette zone grise qui se juxtapose, justement, c'est en train de devenir plus clair avec le programme QCES. Écoute, vous êtes le programme lead. Dites-moi un petit peu, et je suis certain qu'il y a des gens dans l'audience qui sont curieux. Comment est-ce qu'a l'air une journée typique pour quelqu'un qui doit gérer? D'ailleurs, c'est 2 cohortes. Il y en a une en français, dans la langue de Molière. Il y en a une en anglais, dans la langue de Shakespeare. Comment est-ce que ça a l'air, justement, une journée typique en vous préparant pour ce programme-là qui est à midi, les mardis et les jeudis?
En effet. Donc, il y a toute une préparation opérationnelle et logistique, laquelle je ne vais pas détailler parce que c'est un peu ennuyeux. Mais ma partie préférée du cours, c'est quand c'est moi qui donne cours, c'est moi qui facilite la session. Et quand je donne cours à midi, on peut me voir toute la matinée répéter, un peu en stress parfois, parce que j'ai la pression de donner un cours assez solide en 1 heure. Et je dois pouvoir m'assurer que je sais communiquer, expliquer des idées assez complexes d'une manière concise, mais aussi avec bienveillance. De nouveau, il y a le safe space.
Ouais.
Je donne cours pendant 1 heure, mais je ne suis pas seule. Il y a mon équipe V1 Studio qui est là aussi, qui va répondre à toutes les questions des participants. Donc, de nouveau, on est nombreux dans le programme, c'est virtuel, mais on les entend, on les écoute et on leur parle. En 1 heure, c'est vraiment showtime. Je me donne à 100% et à 13 heures, quand c'est fini, je suis KO.
Ouais. Ben, écoute, Alice, c'est merveilleux. Merci. Merci pour tout le travail que tu fais, l'énergie que tu apportes. Et je crois que l'audience va être d'accord avec moi. Il n'y a aucune raison d'avoir un sentiment d'imposteur. Merci d'avoir laissé ça de côté sur Zone Grise. Et puis, bravo et félicitations pour tout le travail que tu fais.
Merci beaucoup.
Alice. Alors, on a parlé justement de la sensibilisation, raising awareness for researchers. So researchers are now taking their first step in entrepreneurship. But what do they do after that? Well, at V1 Studio, we have a program designed specifically for this. Once the researchers have the basic capabilities, they're able to enter something called the Researchers in Entrepreneurship Network. And we have the pleasure of welcoming Quincy Ross, who is the program lead for that. Quincy, come on up here. Let's have a chat.
Je sais vraiment pas comment suivre les réponses à Alice. I have no clue I'm going to follow that up, but.
Oh, that's amazing, Quincy. Well, thank you for being here. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. You know what? We actually have a couple of researchers that have gone through this program in our live studio audience. It feels so great. We're here to support you. And then you guys come to support us. It's beautiful to always see their faces.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so tell us, Quincy, you are an amazing person. You do so many things at V1 Studio. For those of us who don't have the pleasure of knowing you, tell us a bit about yourself.
Absolutely. I have a master's degree. I just finished my master's in management and sustainable development from HEC Montréal.
Congratulations.
And I have a bachelor's degree in communications from Concordia University. But I realized quickly on in my career that I'm not a comms girl. I'm a doer. I was always the event planner with my friends. I want to take an idea and bring it to fruition. And I quickly said, comms is not for me. That's where you're the expert, T, not me. So, and I knew I'd probably stay in business following after my parents a little bit, but I would have to have a vocation for a cause in my career. I would want to work for a nonprofit or work with an organization that has a higher mission. And that's where I landed on V1 Studio. That's at the intersection of all those things: nonprofit, innovation, impact, allowing me to leverage my business skills. And now I could say I'm the project management guru of miscellaneous things at V1 Studio, including designing this program. Some fun facts about me. I am the coffee snob at V1 Studio.
Yes.
And I like working with my hands and being creative on the side. I paint canvases and do floral arrangements.
Yes, you do. I've heard that you have done a wedding or two. Apparently.
I might have done a wedding or two.
All
Yeah.
right, so we'll know who to call if anybody's getting hitched. I think we might have somebody in the crowd who's gonna have that short.
I know someone.
You might know someone. All right. Well, we'll keep your number in mind for that. So that's fantastic, Quincy. Thank you for sharing that, those personal stories. I also believe you acquired a four-legged friend recently.
Yes, little Ivy. She's a miniature Australian Shepherd. She keeps me busy, and the V1 Studio Slack channel is quite busy as well.
Yeah. And we'll follow her on Instagram also. Beautiful pet. Well, okay. So we've discussed about you. Now tell us a little bit more about what is this Researchers in Entrepreneurship Network?
Absolutely. 3 big words putting it together. I have to say it took our team months to figure out what to name this program.
Yes, it did.
And I'm still not sure if it's self-explanatory. The Researchers in Entrepreneurship Network came about from a mandate from a donor to create something new for researchers. So our executive director and I kind of went on a hunt for what gaps exist at V1 Studio for what's offered to researchers in general and in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we found that there's a large gap in soft skill training and relational training for entrepreneurs in general, never mind the smaller niche of researchers in entrepreneurship. And that's where we said, I think there's something we can do here. We're sure we have a parcours at V1, but to develop these skills and answer questions like, how do you grapple with the identity between a researcher and an entrepreneur? How do you put up to date your LinkedIn? Some came into the program without a LinkedIn, some very basic profile. How do you brand yourself? How do you want to be remembered when you walk away from a conversation? What motivates you? And when you're merging these two identities, these are things that I think most people that merge two identities in general grapple with more than someone that's always been in business in their lives. And that's how the program came about. So we really work on soft skills and expanding researchers' network outside of academia.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you're getting out of that zone from academia, it's important to know how you're perceived in another ecosystem, in the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Yep.
So hence the need for the soft skills.
Yeah.
And then you have the networking part over there. But tell us, so why do you think for researchers soft skills are important?
So I think soft skills are important for anyone. I'll say I think anyone should do soft skills training. But in this specific context, academia creates an environment or has characteristics of an environment that cultivates a different skill set. Not all the time, but as a general rule of thumb. And entrepreneurship, industry, business in general also cultivates a different skill set. And there's a gap in these two worlds that don't talk. And so it's important because whether a researcher comes into our programming and decides, I want to stay in academia, I want to go into industry, or I want to launch my own venture, they will be 10 steps ahead, being able to communicate better, being able to be more self-aware, understand their interactions, create meaningful relationships, knowing how they want to be remembered in interactions. These are practical life skills in general.
Yeah, exactly. And so that soft skill, it becomes some sort of an ally for researchers.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so there's a soft skill aspect. We understand the why about that and the problem that needs to be solved, because I guess oftentimes in entrepreneurship, they're not used to having researchers that are sort of poking through.
Not at all. It's I'd say it's newer for the ecosystem. And what one of the collaborators in this program told me, actually works at May, and said, this type of work avoids incubator tourism later on, avoids make sure that we have the right fit, and we're not, creating journeys that are not that won't flow. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no failures in entrepreneurship, and a journey is not linear. All right. It's up and down,
Yeah.
But how can we make sure that, the rest of the ecosystem is ready and prepared to receive these researchers? So it's actually twofold. It's sensibilisation to the ecosystem as well, not just preparing researchers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get a bit into that just a little bit later. So there's a networking aspect of REN. What does this networking aspect look like?
So in the first iteration, we had our first iteration in spring of this year. The first iteration of the program, while we had many ideas, we said, let's stick to the basics. So it started with a welcome day from our team between the 30 researchers in the cohort, and also with 15 plus ecosystem collaborators that we said, hey, come welcome these researchers, tell them what you do. And so that they have an initial support network, jumping into this program and continuing their journey wherever it started, if it started with that, or they're continuing on from QCSE. And then throughout the program, we did workshops. We have an expert here at Concordia University called Joanne Pelletier. She helps us through a lot of our programming. And she came in and did workshops on how do you talk about what you do? We addressed body language. How do you approach someone in a room? How do you navigate a room networking? These are all very awkward things, not just for researchers, again, for anyone who's not used to networking. And so we created environments, safe spaces to be able to do this. And at the end of it, we threw them into a 3-day conference called Startup Fest and said, go for it, now practice.
Okay. So that's very interesting. So you decided to really, learn through trial by fire, essentially. Yep. So what is Startup Fest for people who don't know?
Yeah, Startup Fest is Canada's original startup conference in the form of a festival, because Montreal is known for festival season in the summer. It brings together VCs, entrepreneurs, people just exploring the ecosystem, industry, incubation, accelerators, all to create connections. And in a very warm space, in a very warm, fun ambiance.
Yeah. So you send a bunch of researchers to Startup Fest.
Yeah.
How did that go?
I think some of the feedback we got was we felt underprepared, but that might have been slightly intentional as well, throwing them into the water. So we go through day one together. Going there, we gave them objectives, or we gave them a framework for objectives, rather. We didn't impose objectives, whatever your objective is, whether it be add X amount of connections to your network, find a co-founder, just go learn something new and attend X amount of conferences, all of these possibilities. And we said, set some objectives. So day one passes, the energy's low. I have to admit, it's not like an academic conference. Some are discouraged. Some are like, I need to go home and recharge my batteries. And then day two comes around, and I'm not sure what happened overnight, but some of them started to come to me and say, hey, Quince, I'm going to change my objectives. Now that I've gotten used to what this is, some of them said, I want to go pitch, and not pitch to win an award per se, but just to step outside their comfort zone and try and be heard by someone else and try to communicate. And then on day three, we had a debrief, and it was an absolutely beautiful moment. I mean, you were there, Thierry, most of our team was there. Yeah. It was a beautiful 15 minutes, and some researchers achieved their objectives, some did not, some changed them, some had personal revelations. And all of these are successes for V1 Studio, because what we did is we gave them an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're getting out of their comfort zone. You're also initiating. I mean, there's so many things we can deconstruct here. I wish we had more time. But I do want to talk about that. I think, this is guiding researchers out of the comfort zone. Again, the theme for this episode over here. So why, in your opinion, Quincy, is being vulnerable so important?
Oof. How do I follow up from Alice's answer? Being vulnerable is important to me because I think it's one of, if not the only way to grow. And in entrepreneurial terms, if I can compare it to crossing the chasm, which is you have a venture, you are early stage, and then to bring it to market, there's got to be a certain jump, but you're never going to know unless you try to scale it.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of the same thing for an individual. You are never going to grow, and you will be capped if you don't try to step over that chasm or jump it. And you may fall flat on your face, but none of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world were amazing because they didn't fail before. You learn from your failures. Yeah. And so that's why being vulnerable is important. It's your only way to grow.
Yeah, I think there's a saying that says if you haven't failed, it's because you haven't tried yet.
Yep.
So
yeah.
Maybe that's something that's gonna start filtering in here into this this fledgling movement. One number that I was uber impressed with: 52% of women participated in this program. Wow. Was this an objective for you?
It was for our whole team. What I have to say on that is that notably in STEM, not all social sciences, but notably in STEM, there generally is less women. And then in entrepreneurship is still a very male-dominated space. And so the conversion from academia to entrepreneurship for women is also less. So that's compounded effect. And the reality is a lot of language that is historically used, just the word entrepreneurship itself, has connotations associated to it. So the work that we did in this program, as much as possible, both in the recruitment, communication, and content, was to make it as accessible as possible to women. And I want to thank the entrepreneurial ecosystem here, because I did a roundtable with our 15 plus collaborators back in November of last year to get their feedback. And I picked up the phone and called a couple of people in the ecosystem. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are your best practices? And I think the only way we can get better at making it a more inclusive space is if we talk openly about these taboos, kind of like what the Zone GRE is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can have a whole episode. We probably will have a whole episode on that at some point next year. So Quincy, what's in store for the next iteration of the next round?
The next iteration of the program is very much the fruit of the first cohort and their feedback. So it's going to look like a lot more in person, a lot more safe spaces to practice in low stakes environments, these skills that we're teaching them, and a lot more involvement from the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Yeah, that's going to be great. It's really neat that you brought in 15 partners over there. I remember the launch was amazing. The vibe with over 60 people in a room. Quincy, amazing stuff. Last question over here before we move on. Why are you passionate about what you do?
Why am I passionate about what I do? It's a twofold answer. I mentioned at the beginning about myself that I need to work for an organization that has a higher mission. And part of that comes with, in the work that I do with V1 Studio, I get to work directly and see the impact directly. I just said, I know three, four researchers in the audience right here, and I've followed their journeys. And that is very fulfilling to see that change and follow them and build a relationship with them. And then the other side of it comes from my sustainability, more international, global scale, where I am a firm believer, and you mentioned it in your intro, Thierry, that a lot of the solutions to our pressing real world problems, social, economic, environmental, all live at the heart of academia. And if we want any shot as a human species or any other species at life on this planet, we need to start looking in for those solutions.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's a sense of urgency, and the energy that you bring is fantastic. Quincy, thank you so much. And I want to say that I'm asking a lot of the questions. There's going to be a chance for the audience to ask some questions very shortly. We're going to have a group discussion after our last guest over here. And so, okay, we've talked about sensitizing researchers. We've talked about getting them out of their comfort zone, making them aware. But there's one thing that's uber important. And once again, it's how do they validate their research project in the market? And to answer this question, we have none other than Andrea Cristina Mendoza. Andrea, come on down. Let's have a chat.
Hi, T.
Hola.
Hello.
How are you feeling?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. They're good. Fantastic. I'm doing great. This is so amazing to have this chat with all of you over here. You know, we're just down the office on the Faubourg, and it's great of Concordia to enable us over here and the fourth space to have us. So Andrea, you are a researcher. Your background is in research. You did research at McGill. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you got here so the audience can get to know you.
Okay, T. So yes, I am a researcher by training. I did a bachelor in cognitive science and a master's in muscle biophysics at McGill University. Spent a lot of time in the lab, working with animal models, different types of experiments, intersarcomere dynamics, for those who know. So it definitely was not a straight path to have done a master's in muscle biophysics and now be leading entrepreneurship programs for researchers. And it's a combination of two things. During my master's degree, and this is a message that I'd like to share with any researcher out there who's listening to this, it's taking the opportunity to explore and to network. And I was able to do those two things during my master's degree. And that's really what triggered a chain of events that eventually led me here. I don't want to spend too much time on the details, but I feel that that exploration was the key. Looking at where could I apply my research skills outside of the bounds of academia, and talking to many people, volunteering, doing internships. And that's really what eventually led me to my first job opportunity. After my master's degree, I joined a very young educational startup. And that's where I started honing my skills in program development, program creation, And now I'm super lucky to be able to do that for researchers and give back in one way or another to myself a few years back.
Wow, a researcher who's used your transferable skills and who's done some market validation as well yourself in terms of going out there and exploring how you can use those transferable skills and then apply them to give back to the community. Andrea, we're so lucky to have you. I mean, you do so many things, and the vision and structure that you bring, I know, is something I personally appreciate very much, as I tend to go into clouds sometimes, as my colleagues can attest to. But anyhow, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about the market validation program, the lab to market validation program. So lab to market validate. Tell us a little bit about this program.
The lab to market validation program, lab to market validate, lab to market validation en français.
De validation, oui, merci.
Yes.
Parce que le cours est donné en français d'ailleurs.
Oui, au Québec, ici, on le donne en français.
Absolutely.
It's a super interesting program. It's a unique opportunity. We are lucky enough to be able to work with partners across Canada that are also delivering this program. It's not only available in Quebec, it's available across Canada. For researchers, students in Quebec, you need to be registered at a Quebec university doing research, master's degree and above, either STEM or social sciences. And it's a very challenging program. It is full-time. It is 35 hours per week. It's definitely going to get researchers out of their comfort zone. But it is very rewarding at the same time for those researchers who decide to join and lean into the approach. So the objective of the program is for researchers to conduct 100 interviews. And why 100 interviews?
100 interviews? Hold on a second. Did I hear that right? 100?
100 interviews in a very short span. The program in total is 4 months, but the focus of the 100 interviews is for a very intensive period of about 7 to 10 weeks. And why 100 interviews? Because that's the gold standard in customer discovery. There can be some philosophical views about whether it's 100 interviews or not, but this is what really pushes the participants to go and have conversations with 100 potential stakeholders, clients, influencers, you name it, to validate the commercial potential of an idea. So for this program, researchers do come with something in mind, an idea, a technology, an innovation, some type of new methodology that they feel has some type of commercial potential. And through the program, they're going to try to find a solution. They're going to try to find a problem that is the right fit for what they're thinking. And most of times, part of that process is figuring out that the first thing that they have in mind is potentially not the where they're going to apply that idea, as it happens to any entrepreneur in any field. So the program provides participants with the ability to develop their entrepreneurial skills, to grow their network. They're going to have mentors, experienced instructors, guest experts that are going to come talk to them. And yeah.
I saw Christian Beaubien among us. He's one of the coaches that are there. And tell us, the researchers, they participate in teams, is that correct? And where are they coming from? Give us an idea. And are they from different disciplines as well? Do they have to be from one discipline or?
So very important questions. For this lab to market in particular, they do come in teams together with their supervisor. They have to be registered at a Quebec university. And the application process is a two-step. It's with V1 Studio and also with MyText. So I forgot a very important detail. With MyText, we're able to provide $15,000 in funding for those 4 months for them to exclusively focus on customer discovery. And that is a unique opportunity because there's no risk for the participant. They take those 4 months, dive into customer discovery, and then de-risk, potentially the amount of time and energy that they're going to spend on a particular idea. So it is an amazing opportunity, and it is very accessible. We are right now running our second cohort. We're super happy with the improvements that we made from the first cohort. Alice and Quincy have already mentioned this a little bit, but the iteration and the feedback that we get from our community and our researchers, is so key for the work that we do with our programs. And every time we're able to tweak and develop a better experience. So we're looking forward to welcoming more researchers in future cohorts.
And so the question I think that researchers still have, and you alluded to it a little bit earlier, is that they have to focus on the problem in the market. Researchers are so zoned in on building a technology or deconstructing a social concept and then putting a paper together. But this is a bit of a different mindset. And explain to us, why should researchers validate their research project in the market? What happened?
It is a super important exercise. So I'll talk about it in two ways. We have the group of researchers that come to the program with an idea, with something very tangible, a technology that they think has commercial potential. And it goes back to what I was saying just now, which is the process of validation or invalidating. That's also a successful outcome for the program, is going to allow them to de-risk the time they spend on developing this idea, or more interestingly, provide them a different perspective or direction for the research and the work that they're doing, because perhaps through that process, they find another area, another problem that's more important. So the validation, it's not about, and this is an assumption that a lot of researchers might come into our programs with, which is like, build it and they will come. That's not true.
I think that Field of Dreams, if that was it.
I'm gonna have to go and watch it because I don't have mine.
He's not only on Yellowstone.
And that is super important for them to realize that they're working on a certain field and they have a very biased idea. They're just looking straight into it about what the potential application is, but there's potentially multiple different other applications that where their technology or innovation, methodology, idea could be used. So that's for the group of researchers that come with something very tangible. And then you have the group of researchers that perhaps are joining some of our other programs that, they're just curious about entrepreneurship. And the value in them validating the research or exploring it beyond the bounds of academia, it could be as simple as vulgarization, as developing new skills in innovation and entrepreneurship. And more importantly, and I think for our institutions, for our society, for the government, that researchers are thinking about the validation of their research beyond the bounds of academia is also important, because there's this huge pool of talent that is in there working on research. There's so much money that's being put in there. And we want, one of the things that we're doing at Beacon Studio is really unlocking that talent, because that can only create more opportunities, more productivity, more efficiency for our society at large. And it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of your introduction for this podcast. We need to unlock that talent and put it to good use elsewhere, because we want to make sure that Quebec and Canada are also leading the way in innovation.
Oh, that's definitely inspiring stuff, Andrea. Thank you for sharing that, and amazing. I think the researchers now, we understand the importance of validating that market, and the measures of success are, you don't have to build a startup. You can come back into academia. You don't necessarily ever have to be an entrepreneur. It's just the fact that you've made that point of contact and now you're familiar with this other, which will have tremendous benefits. Andrea, how do you design your programs?
That's a great question, and I think Alice and Quincy have already alluded to that in their answers. So when you start developing a program, you really want to think about the learning objectives. So if you are creating for a learning objective, that means that you have a gap that both of them were talking about that you want to fill in. So in our case, we have a group of researchers that we want to bring from point A to point B. And then whatever that point B is, you build backwards from there. And I like to think about developing programs through the skills, knowledge, mindset framework. So skills, what do we want the participants to be able to do and apply at the end of the program? Knowledge, what do we want them to know at the end of the program? And mindset, how do we want them to feel? Which behaviors and attitudes do we want to see from them? And I believe that that's a very holistic approach to building programs. For researchers in particular, and they've mentioned this already before, and I'm going to pinpoint it, is we actually spend a lot of our energy towards encouraging them, building confidence and soft skill development, much more than the hard skills, knowing what the business model canvas is, your intellectual property strategy, how do you size the market. So that is something that it's a gap that we see in the training and development of researchers across universities, and that we're also trying to fill and build into our programs. So that's one of the areas where we prioritize building programs for researchers. And I would also add scaffolding, baby steps. That is super important. Iterating every time we do a new cohort, we're ticking, we're improving, we are doing reflections and figuring out what didn't work, how are we going to change it, what are we going to do next? And that's super important for the improvement and the impact that our programs have. And the last thing that I will add is always trying to add that experiential element. So getting them to practice, their communication skills through delivering a pitch, getting them, launching them in Startup Fest, and now you have to apply all the things that you've learned. And adding an element of experiential learning just accelerates and really solidifies that knowledge, and that they're going to get to keep with them forever. So those are the things that we think about when developing programs.
Yeah, we always say we're not saving babies, but we're actually growing people over here at V1 Studio. That's amazing. Andrea, last question. Why are you passionate about what you do?
I'm super passionate about what we do at V1 Studio. Really, when I came across V1 Studio, it was this magic intersection between my background in academia. I discovered the innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem during my master's, and I fell in love with it. And being able to develop programs and give back. Truly, it is a way for me to give back to Andrea from 2015 to 2017 and 2019, because I was in their shoes and I understand the frustrations. I was doing my degree, and I thought that the only options were industry or academia, and I had no clue what that meant, and I knew that academia wasn't the path that I wanted to follow. So I could actually go back and find the date when I came across researchers doing entrepreneurship for the first time. And that was a big aha moment for me. And really the work that we do here, for me, it is so important because I want to catch researchers earlier on in their journeys, as soon as possible. At the beginning of their masters, at the beginning of their PhDs, at the beginning of their postdocs, wherever they are, because that knowing the entrepreneurial mindset could have such an impact in the work that they do within the lab as well. And it's a tool set, an amazing tool set that they can take with them and that I think it's going to create more creativity and more opportunities for everybody's on the long run. So
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. So we're at a point where we'll have a group discussion, and then we can open it up to questions. If there's any questions in the crowd, if anybody wants to ask a question, we have one over here. We'll pass a microphone over. Go ahead and please introduce yourself and your question en anglais ou en français.
Yeah, I can do it in English. I don't mind, since most people will understand better. My name is Frédéric Flom. I was a participant in 2 of those programs, so I'm glad to be here and I enjoyed the discussion. My question was, I imagine that the disconnect you're solving in Quebec between research and entrepreneurship exists worldwide. And so how would you describe how it's happening worldwide? Are there initiatives that you've seen that inspired you, or are you about to conquer the world to solve this gap?
I can get started there. It's very interesting, Frederic. I went to a conference this summer in Barcelona that brought together a bunch of universities across the world that are working on embedding entrepreneurship in their university curriculum. So I think it's happening more and more. I think there's other places. You talk about Boston in the States and other hubs in Europe that are a lot more advanced than where we are in Quebec. But I feel that the most important movement or a mindset shift that's happening across the world and in universities is the understanding that the careers of the futures are not the ones that we have understood so far, because there's so many things that are changing, and that we really need to train and develop the researchers and the people that are investing 4 years of their time and money in growing into these careers with a tool set and a skill set that goes beyond what we're typically accustomed to. So that's part of the integration of knowledge that needs to happen across the education system. And I would even go as far as saying that we're not only talking about higher education, but also high school, preschool, you name it. We need to equip people with these change-making skills from very early on. And the entrepreneurial skill set, it's part of that. But we know that it takes time. Sometimes it can be bureaucratic. But I think it's a change that's coming, and I'm looking forward to the day where sometimes we've spoken about this with Quincy, where a B1 studio is not needed, because this is actually embedded in the fabric of the development of any human being, so that we're all better people. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Quincy or Alice, you want to jump in on that? Yeah, thank you for that question, Frédéric. Fantastic. Any other questions from the audience? Anybody? Daniela, do you have one over here? Yeah, we'll just pass you a microphone.
Hi, it's on. Yeah. Hi, I'm Daniela Oliveira. My employer is supporting my presence here, so I'm going to switch to French. J'ai aussi été part de QCES 2 fois, plus qu'une, et du RIN. Et vous avez mentionné de connaissances, de hard skills et les développements un peu plus généraux. Mais c'est drôle, c'est difficile de transmettre ce que vous avez bâti en termes de safe space, en termes de laisser les gens explorer leur vulnérabilité, parce qu'on s'entend bien, dans la vie des chercheurs, on essaye de mitiger tous les risques possibles, puis la vie d'un entrepreneur, c'est vraiment accepter les risques. C'est une bonne transition. Qui vous avez fait, c'est une des choses que j'avais mentionnées. Il y a des choses qu'on est capable de nommer, mais je voulais inviter des anecdotes parce que vous avez eu beaucoup d'ajustements aussi pendant les cours, à cause des participants. Donc, je me demandais s'il y avait comme une anecdote, des choses que vous avez adaptées dans un contexte de bienveillance à cause des participants de la cohorte. Merci.
Merci, Daniela. Comme j'ai dit précédemment, c'est toujours le fun de voir les visages des chercheurs. Et bien sûr, je dirais que parmi nous trois, puis même d'autres chargés de programme chez V1 Studio pour un autre programme, on est toujours en mode agilité. C'est très commun. Pour moi, une anecdote, en fait, Startup Fest, c'était justement ça. On savait pas, on avait le cadre, on vous a donné le cadre pour les objectifs, mais après ça, c'est OK, on s'adapte on the fly. C'est vraiment ça. Je dirais, moi, Pierre, on collabore sur cette cohorte automne 2023, la Bon Marché, puis une autre, c'est à chaque semaine, on a des mises à jour d'entretien. Combien d'entretiens, t'es où? C'est quoi ton progrès? Et à chaque semaine, on reçoit du feedback. Moi, j'ai mes templates ou mes modèles. Puis à chaque semaine, je vois que, je pense qu'on doit focaliser sur un autre sujet la semaine prochaine. Alors, je change le modèle pour la semaine après. Puis, je vais juste savoir environ quelques heures d'avance si je dois pivoter avec ce que je vais demander des participants pour la semaine après. Alors, c'est surtout pour moi, plutôt dans les logistiques et les opérations. Et des fois, on peut pas planifier. Puisqu'on est très centré sur l'humain, c'est très difficile de tout planifier. Il faut s'adapter. Il faut savoir comment vous vous sentez. Puis comme ça, on va répondre. Je dirais que c'est plus ou moins dans nos jours à jour. Je ne sais pas si mes collègues ont des moments en particulier qui viennent leur chercher.
Oui, moi, j'aimerais bien partager un moment c'est maintenant la deuxième cohorte que je gère et j'ai reçu beaucoup de feedback avec la première cohorte au début de l'année, des participants qui voulaient vraiment créer plus de liens entre eux. Ils avaient un lien avec moi, mais pas entre eux. Donc, c'était assez problématique, évidemment. Donc, ici, maintenant, en automne, on a créé des séances de réseautage. C'est des séances hors du curriculum. Et pendant 3/4 d'heure, on fait en sorte qu'ils parlent avec le maximum de participants entre eux. Je me suis permise de m'infiltrer dans ces salles de discussion parce que moi, je veux comme aussi encore créer ce lien avec ces participants. Et je me suis rendu compte que ces discussions se portaient pas en fait sur leurs idées ou leur partage d'idées, mais plus leur mindset et leur crise d'identité qu'ils avaient par rapport au programme QCES et ce parcours d'entrepreneuriat. Et ce mythe, cette assumption that we have about entrepreneurship comes to mind. Entrepreneurs are born, not made. Et c'est quelque chose qui est revenu dans ces salles de discussion. Ah, mais moi, je suis introverte, donc je suis pas en fait vraiment sûre que ce parcours me correspond. Et là, j'ai envie de crier. Je capote. Parce que l'entrepreneuriat, c'est une compétence, c'est un état d'esprit qui s'apprend et qui se cultive.
Bravo. Merci Alice pour ça. Écoutez, we are beyond time already. I will wrap it up, but I just would like to ask this one last question for all of you. What would you like to see, and maybe each of you can answer, what would you like to see from the entrepreneurial and academic ecosystem in the next year? What's something that you would like to see down the pike? And we'll close it with that. Anybody who wants to get us started, please go ahead.
I'll jump in. To answer your question, Thierry, I will go the entrepreneurial ecosystem side. There's a lot I'd like to see, but at its core, I would love to see our entrepreneurial ecosystem in Montreal, in Quebec, and even in other cities in Canada be a lot more open to these discussions, a lot more open to taboos, a lot more, I want them to criticize and critically think a lot more about the connotations and skills that are traditionally associated to entrepreneurship. And work with us and have these open discussions. Like I said, I brought together 15 ecosystem collaborators to give me feedback on the initial design of this program and the best practices to go about putting it out there for the first time. And these discussions need to happen. I'm okay to show my cards. We're okay to show our cards. We want to work with other people. It's the only way. So I'd really like to see a lot more openness from the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I think we're here to prepare researchers for you. Help us do that, and we'll help you do that. And collectively, we'll have more success.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely agree. And I will add the perspective of bringing academia in, bringing more universities in. We're coming after you. We want to talk to you. We want to bring you into our programs. It is super important. Sometimes things move a bit slower, but we're looking to collaborate and bringing that openness and making sure that we're building the networks with universities, with all of our programs. Their researchers are coming to V1. Like in QCSC, we received over 400 applications for our last cohort. We know that more researchers are coming across entrepreneurship. We are, debunking the myths, introducing them. And I think there is a very important conversation to be had with universities to continue to build this into their curriculum, to embed it from the get-go. And I think that's an important step. Universities, should I think there's certain departments or niches within universities that are already starting to work in it, but it needs to be even broader. And I'll add to that we're super proud of the strides that we have done on bringing more researchers, women researchers to our early stage programs. But I'm putting the call out there for any woman, anybody who identifies as a woman who wants to explore entrepreneurship. They don't feel that they have the tool set. They don't feel that they have the skill set. We are here. You have important ideas that are important to be shared. And I'd like to see more women in our later stage programs. We have here 3 female program leads. And it's important to continue to open those pathways and those conversations. And that's what I like to see moving forward.
Beautiful. Thank you. Alice.
But very simply and briefly, in bridging the gap between the entrepreneurship ecosystem and the research context, I would love for those 2 worlds to meet in person. In my program, I see it virtually all the time, and it's great. There is a success, but let's meet in person. Let's exchange stories, advice, and create connections.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you once again. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. I'm Thierry Harris, and this was Zone GRE. Our next podcast will be November 15th. Stay tuned. We'll send you some details. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Quincy. Alice, once again, it's my great honor to be amongst you today. We truly appreciate it. So merci. À la prochaine.
Merci.
Okay, everyone, thank you again for coming in the Force Space. We'll be closing up the Zoom and the live stream now, but just remember that there's the conversations already available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to revisit that or share. And as Thierry mentioned, come back on November 15th. Have a great afternoon.